Good afternoon and welcome to the bustling metropolis of Taipei, located here in Taiwan. We had an amazing 3 nights here in Taipei. We had an amazing month or so overall travelling around Asia, where we checked out the amazing country of Sri Lanka, where we spent 2 weeks travelling around. We've then gone to Malaysia, checked out Kuala Lumpur, Penang and Langkawi. Headed over to the Big Smoke in Bangkok, which was impressive and chaotic as ever. Then we finished up here in the bustling metropolis of Taipei. Anyway, this afternoon and evening, we're going to be heading back to my home base of Perth in Western Australia. Always good to head back to home base after an extended period of travelling. Really enjoyable travelling around, but taking international flights every few days can certainly get a bit tiring. So yeah, definitely good to be heading back to home base for a little bit now. First things first, we've got to take a flight actually to Kuala Lumpur first. That's going to be on AirAsia X, on an Airbus A330 aircraft. I'm going to cover that one in a separate flight review, so be sure to check out that one on the channel when it drops. But yeah, for this flight review, we're going to be heading to, on the second part of the journey, we're going to be flying to Perth, also on an Airbus A330, I believe a 300 series with AirAsia X. So yeah, we're going to be skipping forward to the wee hours of the morning. Going to be leaving Kuala Lumpur at around 1:45 in the morning, getting into Perth at 7:30, about a 5.5 hour journey. So yeah, without further ado, let's now skip forward to the transfer at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. We won't need to check in again, but yeah, we probably will need to re-go through security. Should be able to check out a lounge in Kuala Lumpur courtesy of Priority Pass. So yeah, without further ado, let's skip forward to Kuala Lumpur now and come and join me as we experience AirAsia X on a flight back to Perth in the early hours of tomorrow morning. For your information, before we fast forward all the way from Taipei to Kuala Lumpur International Airport, tonight's overnight flight has a gazetted flight time of around 5.5 hours, or a great circle distance of just over 4,100 kilometres. It will see us taking out over KL, down the coastline of Malaysia, then out over Sumatra before we head south over the Indian Ocean, where we won't see land again until immediately prior to landing in Perth. And just like that, welcome to Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA 2 to be precise, which is the home of AirAsia here in Malaysia. We've just hopped off about a 4-hour and 10-minute flight from Taipei. Be sure to check out the flight review of that one already up now. It was a pretty decent all-round what you get is what you pay sort of experience with AirAsia X, so be sure to check out that one, link in the description below. Anyway, it's about 8:30 here now. We've got about a 5-hour layover until our next flight to Perth, which leaves at about 1:45 AM tomorrow morning. As a Priority Pass member, luckily I've got access to quite a few lounges at KLIA 2. As I'm flying out of the queue here for my next flight, I found the Travel Club lounge to be easily the most convenient one, as it means I don't have to unnecessarily go through security at another pier that my flight is not departing from. You'll find the Travel Club lounge is located immediately adjacent to the Summer Express Transit Hotel, which I actually stayed at for about a 8-9 hour period on my transit on the way through to Colombo when I started this trip. That was a pretty decent experience. So yeah, I think it's actually owned by the Summer, I would have think. So the Summer is definitely one of the bigger lounges, that's for sure. Being late on a Saturday night, it's pretty quiet to be honest. So yeah, it's pretty spacious and pretty comfortable. Conveniently, it is open 24/7, and unlike some other Priority Pass lounges, has a maximum period stay of 3 hours, which is better than 2 hours for some others. In terms of food on offer at the Summer, it's a pretty good buffet spread, a good range of both cold and hot food options. That's pretty good. I just settled for a quick plate of spaghetti bolognese. Hits the spot, ties me over for the quite long layover indeed. In terms of drinks on offer at the Summer, there's a fairly well stocked fridge with soft drinks and bottled water. There's also a self-serve coffee machine which brews a half decent cup of coffee. If you do want something with a bit more of a kick, there is a tended bar, although sometimes you do have to flag down a team member to serve you. Complimentary alcoholic beverages, however, are limited to beer only. You do have to pay more for premium beverages. With the time now approaching nearly 1 AM, it is time to leave the Travel Club Lounge now. Overall, it's a very pleasant way to kill a good 3 hours or so of my quite lengthy layover here in KL tonight. Just one word of suggestion for the Travel Club Lounge would be that if they could maybe integrate it a bit better for people staying overnight at the Summer, that would be really good. If you could kind of incorporate it as a part of the deal, staying at the Summer, that would really be great. Or even if it's a bit of an add-on, an extra $20-30 or something, that would be really good. So you can come and go, get something to eat and drink at the lounge, maybe even take the food back to your room. And yeah, I think that would work really, really well. But that being said, with the Summer, it's right next to the food court anyway, so it's still very easy to grab something to eat. Another word of advice more generally, if you do have a long layover here at KLIA 2, wouldn't really recommend counting on lounge hopping to kill a large amount of time, because even though there is 4 different lounges here, they're all located in a different sort of wings of the airport, and you'd have to unnecessarily go through a lot of different security checks to go to each one. And yeah, a lot of them also have quite limited 2-3 hour maximum visit times. So yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds like it would if you're at Changi Airport or somewhere like that. So yeah, in a nutshell, if you're going to be spending all day, 7, 8, 12 hours, even longer transit at this airport, do yourself a favour and stay at the transit hotel, just like I did when I flew between Perth and Colombo. Really is the way to go here at KLIA 2. So yeah, it's getting very late now here, well into the early hours of the morning now. We're the last flight out of the Cube here and second last flight of the night in KLIA 2 more generally. It was really farcical scenes actually, just after 12:30 at night. Despite the scheduled departure time being 1:45 AM, final call was beaming up everywhere on the screens and people were literally panicking and bolting to the gate, which is really, really funny and really quite ridiculous considering the departure was still over an hour away. I guess in these sorts of situations, it just takes 1 or 2 people to start running and then panic reverberates around everyone else heading for the same flight. In the several hundred flights I've taken before, I haven't really seen such a farcical situation happen before. Really don't know where you would stand if the airline did really were calling final call and had closed the gates, even though you arrived at the gate well before the time mentioned on the boarding pass that it would close. I know airlines in cases of delays can probably revert to an earlier boarding time than had originally been anticipated in terms of the later delayed departure time. But yeah, this flight was on time, it wasn't delayed, it wasn't anything like that. It was very much sticking to the scheduled departure time. I certainly wasn't really too worried like some other fellow passengers at this point, because we were literally the only passengers left in the terminal at this point. So if the plane was going to leave an hour early, it would have going to be leaving without practically everyone. Anyway, lo and behold, as I get to the gate for tonight's flight, there's certainly no such thing as a flight being in final stages of boarding. people are going absolutely nowhere. There's still a bit of a waiting around before boarding even commences. So yeah, I think I can definitely call a BS on the whole final boarding call being made an hour before boarding actually commenced. I can understand being the last flight of the night for this part of the terminal. They probably wanted to get everyone to the gate and to shut down the terminal and go home for the night. But at the end of the day, I don't think passengers should be unnecessarily panicked and rushed to get to the gate, whereby they're only going to have to wait around for an hour or so with nothing really to do and not much in the way of amenities. And I don't think the airline would have a leg to stand on if people miss the flight because they just suddenly decided to leave an hour early without giving anyone formal advance notice of a change of flight time. Now that I'm at the gate and relieved I'm not going to miss my flight and have a bit of a laugh about it, it's a little bit funny, but in reality I wasn't very impressed. Unnecessarily panicking people and calling last call when it clearly wasn't the case. I just don't think that's professional in my opinion. Anyway, on to the information about the aircraft taking us down to Perth tonight. Notwithstanding a few glimpses of it from the Aerobridge as we board, unfortunately this is not the exact aircraft taking us down to Perth tonight. But yeah, we are going to be flying on an Airbus A330-300 as pictured. More specifically, we're flying on 9 Mike X-ray Quebec. Rather old A330-300 coming in at 18 years of age. First delivered to Dragonair in 2006 before switching to AirAsia X in 2014. Did a brief cameo at Indonesia AirAsia X and now it's back at the Malaysian AirAsia X that we're flying tonight. After all the rushing to get to the gate for a seamlessly early departure, boarding is called pretty well, roughly just prior to the original departure time anyway. And just before we're about to step on the aircraft, we finally get a few glimpses to the left and right of our aircraft taking us down to Perth tonight. Much more conventional AirAsia X livery, unlike the other one we saw at the boarding gate tonight. Anyway, welcome on board our AirAsia X Airbus A330-300 aircraft. As I've mentioned in past reviews, very similar layout on this plane. In total, you'll find a total of 382 seats on this aircraft, including 12 up the front in their premium flatbed, so-called business class product. Out the back of the bus, you'll find 365 seats, mostly in a free configuration. However, as you reach towards the back of the aircraft, as I always do, it tapers off to a 2-3-2 configuration. What I've always been quite impressed with on AirAsia X is the legroom and the seat pitch. So it comes in a fairly respectable 32 inch, although the seats themselves are fairly narrow at 16.5 inches width. If you are flying in economy class like most people are on AirAsia X, if you do like your window seat or aisle seats, definitely recommend you consider sitting towards the back of the plane where it does indeed taper off to a 2-3-2 configuration. You will however have to pay a little bit extra for this. Costs about $6 to $7 more than the standard seat selection fee, or if it is complimentary because of your value bundle, you just have to pay the little extra surcharge. So yeah, for me who likes a window seat, having only one person next to me potentially is a lot better than two people, just easier to get in and out of the seat as well. Without further ado, what better time now to just sit back, relax and enjoy as we taxi out to the runway and take off out of Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Once we're firmly in the air, I'll then offer my assessment on tonight's AirAsia in-flight service. Now that we're firmly in the air and well and truly on our way to cruising altitude, must admit it's very late at night or early in the morning per se. It's around 2:30 in the morning, and yeah, this is a generally late overnight flight. There's no time difference between Perth and Kuala Lumpur, so no skipping ahead in a time. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a genuine overnight haul, this flight indeed. Anticipating that the crew are going to get this morning's in-flight meal and beverage service underway very promptly, given the very early time in the morning, let's just have a quick look at the fold-back tray table. Very stock standard tray back table here with AirAsia. In terms of in-flight literature, you've got a few different options, including the in-flight duty-free menu. Interestingly enough, AirAsia do have a huge duty-free range that you can buy on board. Must be one of the bigger airlines that are still doing in-person sales of duty-free these days. More interestingly, however, you've got the usual Santon in-flight food menu. Great thing about AirAsia X is in-flight hot meals are incredibly a good value for what you get. They're usually around 22 to 25 Malaysian ringgit, so around $7 to $8. There's plenty of other snacks and drinks you can get as well. Very reasonable prices indeed. Just one word of advice: if you do want any of the hot proper meal options, best to pre-book it online, as they don't usually sell them separately on flights. If you are into airline merchandise, you certainly come to the right place with AirAsia X as well, with plenty of different airplane models and merchandise that you can purchase. That's really cool. There's also an in-flight alcohol menu as well. You can't get this on regular AirAsia Malaysia flights, but yeah, you can on AirAsia X flights. Prices are very reasonable, much cheaper than the prices back in Australia. Anyway, despite it being the wee hours of the morning, the cabin crew are quick to spring into action with the usual efficiency with their in-flight meal service for pre-booked meals that were handed out first. On this morning's flight, my overall flight package from Taipei to Perth included a meal on both flights. So for this flight, I've opted for the roasted chicken with black pepper sauce, which, as always with meals on AirAsia, the pre-booked meals, it comes accompanied with a 250ml bottle of mineral water. I recall selecting this meal option on the flight up to Kuala Lumpur from Perth at the start of this massive trip around Asia, and I really enjoyed it then, and again tonight, once again, I really enjoyed it as well. Always really enjoyed AirAsia catering. The menu is cheap and plentiful, and yeah, the food's always really good, always really consistent. So yeah, I think AirAsia X are definitely on a winner with its food. Really enjoy it every time I fly AirAsia X, and this evening's flight is no different. With AirAsia X, you can also buy from the buy on board menu. Drinks and snacks and that sort of stuff. Being an overnight flight, however, I don't really bother on this particular occasion. Don't really bother using any of my own entertainment either, opting to get a little bit of somewhat interrupted sleep, but yeah, better than nothing nonetheless. But yeah, apart from that, about 3 hours later, and nothing really much more to report being an overnight flight. Around about 6 o'clock, we start getting the first glimpses of a light as we approach closer to the Australian continent. So as we start to witness an absolutely stunning sunrise as we approach the Australian continent out there, just a few quick initial preliminary thoughts on this morning's flight down to Perth. Once again, I really think AirAsia have delivered on the what you get is what you pay sort of mantra when it comes to low cost travel. But yeah, they really do it in a very positive way in my opinion. Everything I expected they delivered, and yeah, the service is really friendly, the crew are really friendly, and overall I think the aircraft and that, it's a very respectable way to fly if you have to fly low cost in 2023.
Such as food, vegetable, spices, grain, meet your family and other members of the community. Make your arrival into Australia as easy as possible. Just declare it.
Officer Justin here. We're about to commence our descent into Perth International, and local weather reports say that we're expecting clear weather around the airfield, so it should be a smooth descent into Perth. Good news is that we will be landing just ahead of schedule. Expected landing time is at 7:15 in the morning, local time. Landing at Perth International at...
So in a nutshell, this is my 4th flight with an AirAsia group airline on this Asia trip alone. 3 of them being AirAsia X and the other being regular AirAsia. And they're all been really consistent flights, and they're all really got me from A to B with a minimum of fuss and delivered on expectations relative to what I paid and what I was expecting to receive. So yeah, I think AirAsia X, even on this very late night, early morning, overnight flight, the service and the provision of the in-flight meal and everything like that is very much, they've got it part and parcel under control. So yeah, that's what I really like about AirAsia. You really get to expect and understand what you're going to get, you know. Anyway, we're now approaching 7 AM on the west coast of Australia. What better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy this absolutely stunning landing as we cross the coastline of Australia just to the northern suburbs of Perth before making our landing down into Perth International Airport this morning. And just like that, welcome back to Australia and my hometown of Perth. Really beautiful landing, that one, and it's a beautiful crisp September morning out there. Usually when I fly into Perth, either from Asian destinations or the east coast of Australia, usually I get in late at night, around midnight or even later. So yeah, it's quite a change to get here first thing in the morning. In a nutshell, that was a pretty uneventful overnight flight last night with AirAsia. Usually an uneventful flight is a good one in my opinion, however, very much once again with AirAsia, they delivered on what you get is what you pay for sort of mantra, which is a really good thing I like about AirAsia X. I'm really pleased to see the AirAsia group of airlines rebounding quite strongly with their presence here in Perth. After the recent pandemic, with skyrocketing airfares on a lot of the legacy carriers. Yeah, it's really good to see AirAsia, whether it's their flights to Bali or Kuala Lumpur, providing a bit of competition in the market and keeping fares still reasonable for a way to get to Asia. It'd be really good, however, for AirAsia to expand even more in the Perth market. It'd be really good to see Thai AirAsia X operating a Perth to Bangkok route, for example, or maybe even the return of the Perth to Lombok route by Indonesia AirAsia. And without further ado, let's now head straight into the Aussie Jet Setter score index for this flight. And first things first, we start in the ground handling department, and this flight very much is just a part of two flights to take into consideration for the ground handling score, as it originated in Taipei, Taiwan, where check-in was very efficient and seamless in Taipei. They're able to check my bags all the way through to Perth, and the advertised fly-through service, that means you don't have to leave immigration in Malaysia, worked very seamlessly for this flight. So yeah, all worked as advertised. That was really good, very efficient, and yeah, my bags arrived on time at the belt in Perth. So yeah, very hard to complain or fault AirAsia in this regard. So start off the flight index with a very solid 17 out of 20. Next up, we've got the crew and in-flight service, and once again I was very impressed with the crew and in-flight service on this AirAsia flight. Very much the same story with all the AirAsia flights I've taken on this recent journey around Asia. Despite this flight taking off at a ridiculously late 2 o'clock in the morning, did not seem to damper the enthusiasm and the friendliness of the crew, who were eager to spring into action pretty well immediately after takeoff to get the pre-booked meals delivered to the passengers, and also to offer that buy on board menu options. That way to basically maximise potential rest for passengers. It's just something about the AirAsia service provision model. They just seem to really have it part and parcel, packed down the way they do it. Very efficient way of doing business, and very friendly crew. In terms of the pre-booked meal again, it was very much a repeat of the meal I had on the way up from Perth to KL. Very tasty indeed. So absolutely no complaints. Very happy to give them 17 out of 20 for the crew and in-flight service. Next up, we've got aircraft, cabin and seat condition, and yeah, it is a fairly old Airbus A330 being operated on this flight to Perth last night. However, it's pretty darn comfortable for a budget carrier, to be honest. Really appreciate they operate wide bodies AirAsia X. Seat pitch is pretty generous at 32 inch, and yeah, although there isn't all the extra bells and whistles at the seat, it's reasonably comfortable overall. Even managed to get a minor amount of sleep as well, which I was not expecting. So yeah, I'll give them a respectable 15 out of 20. Next up, we've got entertainment, and there really isn't any on AirAsia X, as I fully expected coming into the flight, aside from reading the in-flight literature, if you want to call that entertainment. If it was a daytime flight, there'd be great views as you fly up the coastline of West Australia, but yeah, being an overnight flight, there really isn't much to see until sunrise when you come into Perth, when there's some really beautiful landings. But yeah, if you do want some entertainment, just load up your own laptop or iPad or whatever with some documentaries and TV shows, and you'll be right, just fine to get through the 5-hour flight. So yeah, considering there's no entertainment on AirAsia, but I didn't really expect it, I'll give them 12 out of 20. Last but not least, we've got value for money, and it might surprise you given my fairly positive assessment of AirAsia on tonight's flight. In terms of value for money, it's pretty marginal on this one, to be honest. The total flight all the way from Taipei to Perth with pretty good inclusions, including a meal on both flights, and also my luggage allowance and all that sort of stuff, and my seat selection towards the back of the plane, came in at 525 Australian dollars. That's just the one way from Taipei through to Perth. Now, I don't think that is the greatest value, to be honest. I've certainly seen AirAsia prices a lot cheaper than that, especially prior to the COVID. But yeah, it's just the times we are in now. Airlines are charging a lot more, so AirAsia can probably get away with charging a bit more as well. I actually wanted to fly a Batik Air on the route. Would have cost about $100 less all the way from Taiwan to Australia, but for some reason they wouldn't take my credit card when I tried to book the flight. So yeah, I opted for AirAsia in the end. But at the end of the day, it was still a much cheaper option than other options such as Singapore Airlines or Malaysia Airlines. So yeah, I'll give them credit for that. So all in all, the value of this flight, it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't too great either. So I'll give them 12 out of 20. So there we have it, folks, as we're about to clear customs and exit the airport back into Australia after completing our epic trip around Asia. It's time to hand down my final Aussie Jet Setter score index for this flight, which comes in a very respectable 73 out of 100. So all in all, a pretty uneventful flight, being an overnight flight back to Perth, but a pretty pleasant one nonetheless. So really hope you've enjoyed tonight's flight review as we're flying overnight all the way from Malaysia back to Perth in Australia. Really hope you've enjoyed it and found some useful information about what it's like to fly AirAsia in 2023. If you have liked this review, please don't forget to check out all my other flight reviews from my recent trip around Asia. There's a good mix of economy class, low-cost carrier and business class flights on the channel. Also a few train trips and plenty of walking tours and other awesome travel content from my recent trip there. And as always, don't forget to comment and like and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate that as well. And yeah, in the meantime, you can also visit my website, aussiejetsetter.com.au, for easy navigation to all of my flight reviews and other sort of travel content. You also don't forget to visit my new Aussie Jet Setter Shorts channel, which complements nicely my Instagram account, where you can find all my short form content covering where I am in the world in real time. But until the next one, thank you very much for watching today's flight review, and until the next one, stay safe and safe travels wherever that might take you.